We were just discussing the two media polls. Now, the SEC dropped Friday, but it was after our show was over. But the Cleveland Plain Dealer, the Big Ten does not do one. The Cleveland Plain Dealer then said, okay, we'll step in and do it. So they will go get 50-some-odd voters. They released theirs today with Penn State number one, Luginbill. 35 of the 54 first-place votes go to Penn State. 35 of the 54. Ohio State got 18. Oregon got 1. The Penn State Love Fest probably right now, Lugs, is at an all-time high this offseason.
Well, I think a lot of it is, whether it's an SEC preseason media poll or whether it's one in the Big Ten or any conference for that matter, if you have a solution at quarterback going into the season, you're always going to, potentially use that to carry more weight. Now, what you also see is you just mentioned Oregon in there, you mentioned Ohio State in there. Both of those teams are going to be breaking in new quarterbacks that we don't have the answers to yet, but it's also reflective of both of those programs and their long-standing success, not only in high school recruiting, but in the transfer portal. So voters of these polls are looking at the roster in its entirety, and they're saying, okay, we still think that roster's better, but we don't know what the quarterback's going to do yet. And if you go over to the SEC preseason media poll, it's the exact same thing. You look at Texas, you look at Georgia, you look at Alabama, right? We got to figure out how the quarterback's going to materialize. But when you look at the roster profile in its entirety, you really like what you see. So you're going to default to that, at least initially, in most people's minds.
Okay, so, I think Drew Allar is good. I was telling Brown, I've seen two mocks, Lugs, and Drew Allar went 27th and 1 to the Rams. But if I asked you right now, who has the better quarterback situation? And I'm asking this with a serious face. Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Penn State.
Wow, that is a really, really good question because I think Luke Altmaier at Illinois is really, really good. I also think that Fernando Mendoza, who I watched a lot last year, was the absolute quarterback steal in the transfer portal. But also my last game in person on the sideline, 2 games in a row, was watching Penn State through the college football playoff take on SMU and Boise State. And I think the reason why a lot of people are defaulting to Drew Allar is he is such a physical specimen and he has physical attributes that maybe Luke Altmaier doesn't quite present. Maybe Fernando, although Fernando size-wise is very close, maybe doesn't have the elite level arm strength that Drew Allar does. I can see why people default in that regard. I think that you could take all of the quarterbacks that you just mentioned and put them all on somebody else's team of the teams you just mentioned, and neither one of those teams would skip a beat.
A lot of people pointed in it at Penn State, Lugs, and say, okay, they added Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator from Ohio State. You just mentioned you watched the last 2 games they played, or the last 2 games you did were 2 of the games they played. Defense wasn't the issue. They were 8th in the country in scoring defense, 16.5. I mean, all right, Jim Knowles shaves 2 a game off that. That'd be a pretty good improvement. That's not really impacting the outcome to me. I think Jim Knowles is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know that it's this massive change for Penn State.
No, it's not. And listen, it's a really nice pickup, but they've got great personnel on the defensive side of the ball, and the vast majority of it's back. Obviously, you lose Abdul Carter, but I think that the defense is in good hands, just as it was when it went from Manny Diaz to Tom Allen. And I think you're going to see a significant impact with Tom Allen at Clemson, far more than you're going to see with Jim Knowles at Penn State. And both of them, you could say, have very comparable talent on that side of the ball and expected to be very, very good football teams. I think with Penn State, it's put up or shut up time. And they need to prove that they can play their best football against the best teams on their schedule, and that Drew Allar can make the plays that are the difference in the game. The backfield's fantastic. They're going to have weapons on the perimeter. Obviously, to lose Tyler Warren, that's a huge X factor because of all of the things that he did. So I think, if you're pushing your chips to the table for Penn State, you need Drew Allar to take that next step to solidify himself. And if he does, we're not talking about a top 25 first-round pick. We'd be talking about a potential top 10 first-round pick.